Today's presenters are Fletcher Group co-founder and Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Ernie Fletcher, and Lori Baier, Director of Employment Services. Fighter pilot, board-certified physician, statesman, and healthcare visionary, Ernie Fletcher was elected in 1998 to the first of 3 consecutive terms in the United States House of Representatives. In 2003, he was elected the 60th Governor of Kentucky. As founder of the Fletcher Group, Ernie continues a legacy of innovative public service that promises to extend the company's unique model of recovery ecosystems to the states across the country. 25 years as a registered nurse have given Lori a keen understanding of healthcare's diverse population base. In the 5 years before joining the Fletcher Group, Lori devoted herself to creating second-chance career opportunities for the most vulnerable by developing and teaching AO Kentucky Gen Ed programs at Ashland Community and Technical College in Kentucky. Her ability to reduce barriers and bridge gaps in education plays a key role in the Fletcher Group's promotion of recovery through the kind of meaningful employment that rebuilds lives, restores families, and revitalizes local communities. Dr. Fletcher, Lori, the floor is yours.
Well, Michelle, thank you very much. And we want to say thanks to all the participants that have joined us today. When we look at recovery, one of the things that we find out, and we'll talk about that, is meaningful employment and opportunities to find more purpose in life and meaning and connections is extremely important for individuals with substance use disorder along their recovery pathway. Next slide. I'm going to give a lot about the Fletcher Group. Most of you have tuned in, several times for these webinars, but our focus really has been to expand the full continuum of care. And part of it's with obviously a focus on recovery housing, and with our HRSA grant, we're focusing in the rural areas and how do you help rural communities build a recovery ecosystem. An important part of that is meaningful employment, and that is part of what we see as the full continuum of care. Next slide. When you look at how much substance use disorder really costs, it's about $81 billion estimated spent each year as a directly related to substance use disorder in the workplace. So it has a significant financial impact. Next slide. We also see that there's a lot of absenteeism and presenteeism that's going to be associated with substance use disorder. And so not only do you have those direct costs of what it costs because of the sequelae of SUD, but you have the indirect cost as well. Next slide. Now, there's about 20 million individuals that have a diagnosis of SUD in the country, and I personally think that's probably a little bit of an underestimate. 70% of those work at some point, but what you find out of that group that they have a lot of turnover. 58% of those with OUD really keep their job over a year, and you find out there's a substantial turnover with these individuals. So the bottom line is that we've got 30% of individuals with SUD that are not employed, either because they're not capable of employment, their SUD is, and the consequences of that have just kept them out of the workplace, or they don't have the adequate training and preparation for the jobs that are available. Next slide. And again, meaningful employment is a critical part of what we call recovery capital. Those individuals that find employment that are meaningful to them, that are really helping them build their meaning and purpose in life, really makes them a lot more resilient. And so what we find as part of this full continuum of care is transitioning them into an employment position that is significant, that provides a living wage, provides an opportunity for them to continue to expand their career. And again, as we're looking out nationally, and there's about 11.1 million job openings in the nation at this point. And we've got, again, 20 million individuals with SUD. A good portion of those are not capable of keeping a job for very long because of probably the consequences with SUD. and another 30% of those are just not employed at all. So the bottom line is we've got a significant need in this nation for employees and well-trained employees and very capable employees. We also have a source of employees that can be extremely efficient and actually, I think, be very productive workers, and probably more than those walking off the street. So as we begin to talk, meaningful employment is a significant part of building an individual's resiliency and reducing their reuse. Next slide. I'm going to introduce Lori, and Lori, let you take over at this time. Lori's our Director of Workforce Initiatives, and she's been involved in this for over 3 years now, doing an excellent job of really being able to transition folks in recovery into meaningful employment. This has been primarily a part of our Appalachian Regional Commission grant, but we're also supporting this now in our extended year with the Rural Center of Excellence through a HRSA funding. So Lori, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ernie, and welcome everybody. I'm really happy to be here and kind of share some of the good and the bad that we've learned working over the past 3 years. I will say that a lot of my presentation is going to be focused on work in Kentucky. However, it's very replicable. The things that we've been able to do and the lessons that we've learned, I think apply in every rural community. So just keep in mind that, the things that I talk about today are things that we could help you do no matter where you're located. So when we first started with this ARC Power Grant, we realized, Kentucky, we were going through, COVID began shortly after this grant started. And then obviously that impacted the workforce in a very major way. So Kentucky's unfilled job opening rate is actually the second highest in the nation. However, we also rank third in the nation for the highest number of overdose deaths. So we saw a real opportunity to connect, with the recovery centers and employers and try to build these relationships that will not only fill these employment gaps, but will also help sustain a path of recovery for the clients that were being served. Next slide, please. So how do we create a launch pad to meaningful employment? And that's kind of what we've termed it over the past 3 years. We feel like individuals coming through the recovery centers, initially our focus is to get them, safe and healthy and in a good place mentally. So, we work with long-term recovery centers and some outpatient facilities and even some detention centers. But, we want them to land on this launch pad when they're ready. And then we create that whole environment of training and support so that we can transition them or help them to transition into meaningful employment. And so how do we do that? So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Some things that we've learned that have been very valuable and, addressing individuals on that launch pad and helping them transition out. Next slide. So the road to meaningful employment, like I said, it starts with treatment. When an individual commits to that life of sobriety, we help them get through those steps, workforce training and employment, but you have to have those recovery support services available throughout that entire process. We know that, just the treatment portion isn't enough, just the workforce training isn't enough, and just the employment isn't enough. It's going to have the full ecosystem in place for it to really be successful. Next slide, please. So our unique approach through Fletcher Group, so we are a recovery model. It's a complete continuum of care. They get the MAT, the peer support, workforce development, social enterprise. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, but it's within a housing model that is funded through different partnerships that we've been able to help communities create in order to create that housing model that helps with the entire program being a success. Next slide, please. So when we think about employment or workforce development, or when those clients are ready to look at their future in a career pathway, what things are important to know from your facility? What are some things that your facility can do to kind of help kickstart those relationships that you're going to need out in the community? So when we first began this ARC Power Grant in Kentucky, there were specific centers that we identified that we were going to work with. So, initially, we did an environmental scan of those regions. We wanted to know what resources were available, who were the stakeholders in those communities, um, you know, what relationships did they have within those communities. And one thing that I quickly realized was, sometimes not all of the recovery centers knew of the resources available. And again, not all of the resources that were out there knew of all the recovery centers. So it was just a little more of, okay, how do we connect everyone a little better? So we just established work groups. Um, the initial idea was to invite people in to the community. You want the community to come into your recovery community. I think a lot of employers, a lot of businesses, a lot of support services may not even be aware that they can come in and visit and kind of see what's going on. So the first thing we did was invite all of those people to a meeting at the actual recovery center that we were working with. And, surprisingly, we had a really large turnout at most of our places. I don't know if in the beginning it was just people were curious as to what goes on inside a recovery center, or, if maybe they had been wanting to engage with the recovery center for a long time and just hadn't taken that step. But either way, we got people there. So you want to make sure that you let everyone know your doors are open. You come see us. We're going to show you this program and how it's working, because that gets rid of a lot of the stigma, a lot of the questions they may have, or a lot of the hesitance about what's really going on inside there. Just be an open door and let them come in, sit in your community groups. And that really goes a long way. Also, know what your regional employment gaps are. We can look at data from a high level and know overall, we know healthcare is struggling. We know manufacturing is struggling, but what is specific to your rural area? And you really want to capitalize on that. What's unique to your region or your state? We're going to talk a little later about how we were able to establish a program in Kentucky that's really unique to what Kentucky's known for. You can do that from a state perspective, but everyone's community is known for something. And, I think you get a lot of buy-in, from your local leaders and, any of your community members, if you're focusing on kind of what their claim to fame is. And there's a lot of work to be done around that. And, another part of economic development right now is so geared toward these little community niches, it's revitalizing downtowns and things like that. So you want to make sure from a recovery space perspective that we're not forgetting that we don't always need these high level industry careers, that sometimes there's something really cool in your community that needs the help of the population that you're serving. Also know your clients. It's really important to meet with them individually, do some personality assessments, do some aptitudes and abilities assessments. We created a very just generic on-word document type questionnaire that we give to every client, with the last question being, what is your dream job? And if we can get them on the first stepping stone to that dream job, then I think we have set them up well on that launch pad to go right on out and have a meaningful career. A cookie cutter program does not work with this population or any population. Everyone has unique ideas and talents and skills. And I think our goal is to really tap into that. We need those skills out here. We need that uniqueness. And the way you do that is ask the questions. You want to create an individualized, obtainable, and meaningful pathway. So by assessing them, but then also, checking, do the personality profiles. Just because you have a skill set for something doesn't mean you may necessarily be the best for that particular job. So you really have to look at the personality in addition to the skill set. So we've been able to create a tool where we can assess all of those things. Obtainable, it has to be obtainable. We can't start them on a very long pathway. They transition out in 2 months and they're expected to continue that long pathway without any support. Like I said, think of what the first step is. Maybe it's a certification. Just, in general, maybe they want to be, a registered nurse. And then maybe we help them get, maybe a state registered nurse aide, or maybe we help them do a job in environmental services at a hospital, some way to get their foot in the door to that career pathway. And that really seems to motivate folks. Of course, we always have to think about the barriers. Their background is going to play an important part, but don't let that be a stopping point. We're seeing a lot of movement in Kentucky where employers are no longer just flagging that background check and kicking an application out. Even in our healthcare settings, we're working with hospitals that are truly looking at those cases on an individualized basis. We just recently helped a large healthcare system in Kentucky with a program filling some environmental services jobs. They ran background checks on 8 individuals. All 8 of those would have been flagged and kicked out. But when they sat down and looked at those individuals and really went through some of the barriers that they thought were there, 5 of those individuals actually qualified for employment, and they're still employed there and doing fantastic. So maybe it's just having that conversation with the employers, can we look at this, with a microscope, because we all know sometimes the things on that background check, most often the things on that background check does not reflect where they are today. Successful employment isn't about job skills alone. We can give them a certification or a training that has a unique skill set, but we really have to help them develop those soft skills. And I know all of you all are probably very familiar with that, but that kind of has to be a precursor, and having a good, solid soft skills type training program in place is going to help set them up for success when you put them into the skills training for their job. So, you have to have that complete package. And even just things like financial management, those are all critical pieces for them to be successful as they transition out. So you kind of have to think of that whole continuum of care, everything that they need to manage themselves when they get out and to be a good team player in that employment setting. And I think we all need those skills. It's not just this population, everyone can benefit from that. And like I said, provide the first step to the dream. That's truly what my goal has been. And like I said, I think that's so far we've had, really positive feedback in 3 years with looking at it from that perspective. Next slide, please. So, if you're new kind of to this space, or you're not sure, where do we even start with creating a workforce program within a facility or an outpatient program? I'm going to give you some examples of programs that we've tapped into here in Kentucky, but a lot of these are available, like I said, nationwide. It's not just specific to Kentucky. So, some of the programs that we have leaned on, well, first of all, GED and state adult education is available nationwide. Everyone is assessed. If they don't have a GED, then we start them in that program early on. You have, in a long-term recovery program, you have about 6 months with that client, give or take 4 to 6 months, to kind of prep them for that workforce. So start your GED and that type of training early on. It also gives them something to work toward. It gives them, a boost to their self-esteem. And those are all things that are just really important just as they grow as an individual, even outside of the workforce. Your local community and technical colleges, of course, are a great resource. Your local career center, sometimes they will have, specialized trainings or some funding that your client may need that they may qualify for. Something that we've used in Kentucky is a program called Future Plans. It's a really cool assessment, coaching, and soft skills type course that, as long as the individual wants to stay enrolled in that program, they can stay in for life. No matter where they move. If they were to move to California from Kentucky, they could log in and it would show them training, education, employment, all those things in the area where they are. So it's a really neat tool that we have come across. Another program that we're using is called Fair Chance Works. This one as well would be available anywhere. It's a virtual interview prep. So one thing that we're seeing in Kentucky is some employers are really kind of moving to that virtual interview format. And we know that, interviewing is I don't even want to say it's a barrier to these clients, but it's something that they're a little uneasy about. They aren't sure how to explain maybe some of the situations that they may need to explain. So we actually consulted with AppHarvest, who's a large Fair Chance employer here in Kentucky, and kind of help us understand what these clients may struggle with, where they might need some help speaking about their past, or what questions do they typically struggle with. So they were a consultant for us and helped us develop this. So now we're offering this in detention centers and recovery centers, geared toward those questions that we feel that they may most likely struggle with. So the way that it works, the client practices the questions and they get a lot of other soft skills training, to kind of prep them for that interview. And they record themselves answering those and they get feedback. We have people on site, as well as when they submit assignments, someone's reviewing those and kind of coaching them through that until they're satisfied with the way that they answered that question. At the end, we compile all of those into a really professional looking interview. And then we can share that with employers. So eventually our goal would be to maybe have different sectors. Maybe these are people that are interested in construction. Maybe others are, interested in, some type of office skills, but we could actually categorize those individuals in that region, and then employers can log in and watch those interviews on their own time and then choose who they would like to call in for a face-to-face. So it's a time saver for the company. They love it. And the clients feel very comfortable and very proud of what they've been able to produce. And it's just a really great tool to connect with employers without having to bombard them with emails and visits and appointments. Another training option that we've helped to develop is called a company called Made 180. So with this company, they offer very short-term stackable certifications and credentials, like through Autodesk. So we know that remote jobs, there's definitely a demand for that. This is absolutely something that these clients could do remotely. We're working to set up remote work hubs within recovery centers as well as detention centers. So here in Kentucky, we have some detention centers who are doing an early work program. So inmates that are identified for this program can work 6 months prior to release. And they're able to save money and to pay off some debts that they may owe. And it just puts them in a better place financially, and they're engaged to employment way before they're ever back out into the social back out into their living their life. So, if we were to establish remote work hubs in say, for example, a county detention center, that's an employment they just take with them when they leave. So they're already engaged 6 months in a job. When they exit out, all they need is a computer and reliable internet, and transportation barriers are reduced. And it's just been a very, very neat kind of out of the box way to address some of those barriers that we were having a hard time to overcome. But Made 180 offers multiple types of trainings, and they can be obtained, anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, which was also very important. I felt like, we don't have a lot of time. Once these clients are kind of ready to hit that launch pad, we don't have a tremendous amount of time to prep them as they transition out. So, a 2 to 3 weeks training to give them a credential to get them into work is fantastic. And then they can continue to build on that skill as they move through the path, through their life. So it works out really, really well. Local economic development groups are a great resource. Reach out, make sure you're completely connected to them. Like I said, you're just building that safety net and that ecosystem. The more people you can pull in and make a part of your team at your facility, the better your clients are going to do when they transition out, for sure. Okay, next slide, please. So the employers that you connect with. So, we kind of talked about the things you could do on the recovery side. Let's talk about on the employer side. What things are they looking for? Visit their site. We invite them into yours, and that's extremely important, but make sure you go to them as well. Look at the environment, make sure it's something that you feel like your clients are going to thrive in. Have an understanding of the role that your clients are going to be doing there. And I think that just kind of, gives everyone just a complete view of what that relationship is going to look like. Have a dedicated point of contact is probably one of the most critical things. Have someone at your facility or at your organization who is responsible for that daily or weekly or whatever contact with that employer. That way, if an issue does arise, they know exactly who to call, and you can address that before it ever snowballs into a much larger problem. Having that regular contact, checking in, how are they doing on the job? Is there anything that you need from the facility? Anything, we can help you with, any barriers? When you have those conversations regularly and frequently, there's hardly any problem that can't be worked out. What are unique needs that they may have? is there some specialized training that you could offer or find someone to help you offer to your clients? For example, we were working with a laborers union, a construction union, and they said, you know what, we would love to have people come in here that have some construction math skills. You know, that's a class that you can't really find just kind of as a standalone, but you can develop that. You know, that's absolutely something that you could, if you have clients interested in like a construction line of work, you know, you could find a construction math class basically anywhere, or you could contact me and I'll help you find one. But, you know, just doing those little extra things, the employers just love that. You know, they know that they're getting the highest quality if you take the time and really listen to what their needs are and you try to address those before that client shows up for an interview. They're going to keep coming back to you for workers. And like I said, create a training plan for that client on the launch pad and involve the employer. Maybe you have some dedicated relationships to employers and sit down with them and let them help develop what that training should look like prior to that client applying for that job. And like I said, that's a great way to really connect with those employers and let them know that, you know, you're going to have clients who have exactly what they need by the time they show up for work. Also, apprenticeship opportunities are fantastic. Those work really great for individuals in recovery because they kind of have a mentor working with them. And I think that you know, just adds to that ecosystem that's very healthy for them. OJTs, you know, those are fantastic. Job shadowing opportunities. If your client isn't sure what they like to do, schedule some times for them to go in and work a day, you know, observe a day in 2 or 3 different career pathways. You know, most employers really welcome that. So, you know, we've done some of that with clients who were just unsure really of what they would like to do. Also, don't forget to mention the employer incentives. You can reach out to your local career centers and they can tell you the process of getting your employers, you know, there's work opportunity tax credits, there's federal bonding available. Certain sectors have some funding to do some paid work experience. So, you know, if you're working with a high demand sector and, you know, you could potentially get some paid like 480 hours paid work experience through some employers. You know, the work opportunity tax credits typically apply to your for-profit businesses, but those are also available to some nonprofits like a hospital. I think if you're hiring from certain populations like veterans. And so we do see, you know, veterans coming through some of the recovery programs. So it's still possible for even a nonprofit to receive some tax credits. You would just have to talk to your local career centers or, you know, whatever they may be called in your particular state, but they can help you help that employer take advantage of those incentives that are out there. And then, like I said, stay in touch with that employer, have that ongoing relationship, that once a week meeting, just to check in or pop in and see how that client's doing on the job. You know, that's just worth so much to that employer if you kind of help them stay on top of things and not let those barriers get in the way of employment. Okay, next slide, please. So just a little bit about this particular grant that I was telling you about in Kentucky, the ARC grant, which is termed the ROAR grant, which is Recovery, Hope, Opportunity, and Resiliency. So in the past 3 years, even with COVID, we have been able to get now, I think this number is closer to 400 individuals employed since August of 2019. We have multiple employer partnerships with large companies, small companies, mom and pop companies, you know, they're all eligible. Look at all of the options. You know, I think sometimes we tend to think big, and that's great. You know, companies like App Harvest or Toyota or some of the large companies, but we have just as much success in these small, just, you know, family-owned companies as well. And everyone is eligible for all, you know, the incentives and help and things like that. So look at all types of employment, not just your large companies. And actually, you sometimes can get things done a little more quickly with those small companies because the larger ones tend to have more layers of HR to go through. Not that it's impossible and you should still seek those out, but just keep in mind the small companies can be very, very helpful in hiring your folks. And they also provide that kind of more of a personal one-on-one relationship, that I think is obviously a plus too for this population. Since we started, we've had over probably close to 500 certifications earned. And this is 6 recovery centers that we've been working with, just since we started in 2019. So it's been very, very successful, and we're always looking for ways to improve it. Next slide, please. So back to the concept of finding what your region or your state or your county or your city is good at, and look for those niches. I just wanted to share a project that I've had the opportunity to be a part of. So in Kentucky, of course, I think, one thing that we're known for is our horses, right? So we think of the Kentucky Derby, we think of the thoroughbreds. It's kind of something that Kentucky has made its mark with. So we reached out to one of the horse farms, one of the thoroughbred farms called Tailor Made Farms in Nicholasville, and talked to them about a program. If we were to partner with a recovery center, we know that horses are extremely therapeutic. There's a lot of employment opportunity in the thoroughbred industry in Kentucky. And what if we were able to help transition individuals out of recovery into employment in the thoroughbred industry? So of course they were very excited to partner with us, and we developed what's now called the Tailor Made School of Horsemanship. So now individuals in recovery who have a desire to work in this industry can apply and interview and be ultimately accepted into the Tailor Made School of Horsemanship. They go through 12 to 16 weeks of training. They start as an entry-level groom, knowing that there is a career pathway if they are successful. And then at the end of that 12 to 16 week training period, as long as they've been successful, then Tailor Made offers them full-time employment. So it has been a fantastic program, and I wanted to share a video just to show you a little more about how a relationship like that works. So Erica, I will let you show us that.
Hey team, it's January 26th. I'm out here looking at the ready-made horses and watch the guys train the horses. Everything's going really good, going to plan. The team's really operating well, and the horses are all training well. So we're on target to get these horses to the races, hopefully all as 2-year-olds. We moved from Classic Mile Training Center to Winding Oaks. It's a much better track. We got a turf track here. We got a mile dirt track, and we got a 5/8 dirt track. It's a little heavier, so it's lots of options. I'm training these horses, so it's just a great facility. And like I say, all the horses are doing well. We're really appreciative that you've put money up to help us support these guys and give them an opportunity. We'll keep you posted as we go along, and hopefully we'll have something running at Kingman this spring. These guys are doing amazing, staying sober and working hard and really into their work, and they're building their lives back. So we appreciate you helping us to accomplish this.
Hey guys, just wanted to thank you guys, all of you, for the opportunity and having us down here and doing what we're doing. We're out here right now. We're just training a couple sets. All the horses are going out. They train on this small track here. Moved to, as Frank said, we moved to Becky Thomas's about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Horses are doing well. Everybody's training well. Every single one of them's in training, so that's a plus. We've got narrowed it down to 4 that we're going to try and aim for Keeneland right now, and then the rest kind of towards the later of the year. But knock on wood, everything's going great. Mike and Tyler are the 2 guys working with me. We've been together for about 1.5 years now, and our relationship, as you can imagine, working in a barn with these horses has definitely grown. And we're all just extremely grateful for the opportunity. Thanks.
A year ago, this is not where I thought I would be. It's like a dream every day I wake up. These horses this whole opportunity Ready Made is just a beautiful thing. These relationships that you build with these horses, you know, being with them, you know, 7 days a week. Me as a rider, like I get really close to these horses. This is Bo Dior out of Monday Morning Blues. He's really became my best friend. It took me a while to build his trust. He trains strong. All these horses train strong. And I feel like it strains from what we at Ready Made put into this, starting from the ground up. Love and tolerance, patience, and our energy. You know, as a unit, as a team that we are, it flows into these horses and how they train. You know, they want to do more and more and more. And, you know, all it really is just you and a horse out there doing a job, trying like hell to not let one another down. And it's like that every day with me and these horses, because I want what's best for them, and just appreciate the opportunity.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Juan Ramos, and we're working here with this beautiful horse, Justify. This kind of horses are hard to come by. One of my favorite horses of the group. We have some nice horses here. Thank Frank and thank the family for giving us the opportunity to work with these horses. We've got a group of guys here working with us, and we really enjoy what we're doing here. These horses are coming around beautifully. I would love to say hi to you guys in person. You're gonna get to see some more of this guy in the future.
Hey guys, this is Michael, just checking in with you, letting you know how everything's going. Everything's going great. I'd first and foremost like to say thank you for this opportunity that you blessed me and my brothers with. We're enjoying ourselves out here at Becky Thomas's. The horses are doing great. This opportunity has given me a chance to further my horsemanship skills and to be able to, it's changed my life totally. I never in a million years thought that I'd be working with horses, let alone some race horses. Here at Ready Made, we take a lot of pride, especially, you know, me, I tell Will all the time, you know, here at Ready Made, every horse is treated like a million. So I just want you guys to know that everybody's doing wonderful. The horses are doing great, they're growing. And once again, man, we just can't thank you enough for this opportunity to be able to do something positive with our lives. From the bottom of my heart, it means the world to me. I can't thank you enough. You guys have a great day.
So, you know, Tailor Made, like I said, was just a project that we just kind of dreamed about, and you know, just kind of sat down with the owners there of that farm and explained that we, you know, felt like we had some great employees to send to them, and we were able to continue conversations and we're able to develop it. And actually those guys, that's a little bit of an older video, but they did run horses in Keeneland this spring. And so they moved up from a groom to a horse trainer to rider. So they're just continuing on that career pathway at Tailor Made, and they're doing great. And they're staying in a healthy, productive life. And that's the most important thing. Another piece that's important, you know, not everyone is going to want to have training. Not everyone's going to want to have a certification of some sort in just a work skill set. You've got a lot of entrepreneurs in the recovery population. So in Kentucky, we have partnered with Southeast Kentucky Economic Development to create a program called Real Kentucky. It's recovery entrepreneurship, elevating lives. This could be real any state, real Texas, real USA. We could do it anywhere. But it's a Smarts and a BBOSS online training program that teaches individuals how to start a business, how to market a business, you know, anything that they would need to bring their idea or their dream to life. So we've been able to offer this in the 6 recovery centers. We allow the individuals to participate in teams of 5 or 4 or whatever we have. And they all develop a business idea and a plan and a PowerPoint and the pro forma, you know, everything related to building that business. And then we do a pitch competition at the end, with the goal of either these individuals starting these businesses once they transition out, or the center itself starting the business to kind of, you know, help maintain, you some financial funding. It's another revenue stream. Plus it's a work opportunity for clients as they come through the program. And so to date, we have had 4 businesses start up in the, out of the 6 recovery centers with more on the way. So each of those centers have been able to kind of create this opportunity within itself as a training program for clients, which is extremely, extremely valuable. Next slide, please.
Lori,
Yes.
before you move on, we do have some people really interested in what those businesses were.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't think we're gonna have time to watch this video, but I promise if you email me, I will send you some presentations because it is fantastic to watch. But we have, so we have 2 centers that have done a graphics printing type where they have original artwork, which is super cool because that's therapeutic in itself. So clients actually design their own t-shirts, anything that they want to kind of support recovery efforts. And then they print those t-shirts and sell those in an online format. So we've had a couple of places do that. We have one mill facility that takes, they have a partnership with Walmart and Lowe's and a couple of other lumber companies in the area, and they do what's called reclaimed furniture. So they make, made to order type items for folks, but they also make a lot of beds and things like that for individuals in the community that need beds. And actually the project that they did for their pitch competition was a twin size bed out of that reclaimed wood for a little girl in the community that needed a bed. So they do a lot of community outreach with that program as well. We have another facility that's getting ready to open up a business called Barbecue Addicts. So it's going to be kind of like a food truck type idea where they sell barbecue, and it's they have their own recipe, and it's pretty neat because the name of their recovery center is Hickory Hill, and so you've got the hickory smoked kind of theme going with it, and it's just super cool. So that one should be starting up in the next 2 to 3 months. And then we have another facility that has a coffee truck idea. So we're looking for a little larger grant to get theirs going, but it's a fantastic idea, and it's called All About That Bean. And that's just people that the centers that have started businesses. That's not including all the people who have gone out and actually started businesses on their own outside of the facility. We just added a little spinoff on this called Real Kentucky Invents. So we're currently doing a class where they invent a product instead of a business. So we will have that pitch competition a little later this month. So if anyone out there would like to participate, watch, or be a judge, you let me know because we're always looking. So these teams they're creating an actual product. But like I said, if you would like to see any of the pitch competition footage, just email me and I will be glad to share that with you. But it is such a fantastic, their creativity is just unreal. There's so much talent. And it's a great to tap into it.
Yeah, Lori, let me just add, anybody who's watched Shark Tank, you kind of get an idea of the pitches. So I had the opportunity of judging before, but you bring 4 or 5 centers together and they have teams, and they've really developed an entrepreneurial enterprise along with pro forma and the products, and they present that. And it's really fascinating because even if they don't win, and we have winners and losers, obviously, but everybody, and I will say there's real no losers because everyone has an opportunity to start that business, but we're able to give some prizes to it. And it really has instilled a tremendous amount of enthusiasm. So Laura, you've done a great job on that. Because what we find is a lot of these people are just extremely creative, and they find this extremely rewarding. It gives them a lot of meaning and purpose. Just wanted to interject that, Lori. You do a great job on that.
Well, thank you. And like I said, I mean, if anyone is ever interested, we would love to have your facility as part of this. The more, the better. We would like to share it with everyone. It's a super low cost training that has great benefits at the end of it. And even if they don't start a business, they're a better employee because they've had this training. So really, you can't lose by doing something like this. It's just so much fun. Okay, next slide, please. And so how do we know it works? Of course, we're going to track our outcome and our data, have those conversations, watch your local data, and always be willing to continuously adjust and improve. as we go through, you know, even like with rural Kentucky, it's fantastic, but how can we make that better? You know, how can we reach more people? You know, always have an open mind that, you know, any program can always be improved. And so that's just what we try to keep adding new things and improving upon what we've already done. So far, you know, it's been a learning curve for sure. Not everything has worked 100%, but we've adjusted ourselves and had a lot of success. Okay, next slide, please. This is my contact information. If you have questions about anything related to workforce, I would love to work with you, brainstorm with you, any or all of the above, share whatever I've learned, I'd be happy to. And also the do's and the don'ts, because there've been a lot of don'ts along the way too, but I will share all of that information with you. Maybe save you a headache or two down the road. I'll turn it back over to you, Ernie.
Yeah, Lori, thank you. We're ready to take some questions. Let me just kind of provide just a few thoughts in summary. One, there's a tremendous need. I mentioned the 11,000 unfulfilled jobs or unfilled jobs in the United States, and that exists in every state in the union. So there's a tremendous need out there. We've got a tremendous resource, and it really is so synergistic. You know, coming from Kentucky with the thoroughbred industry, I hate to say, but that video always brings tears to my eyes, because you think of the therapeutic aspect of meaningful employment. And in that case, it's rather special because they bond here with these horses. And the fact that TaylorMade Farm, which is one of the finer thoroughbred farms really in the nation, I think they happen to make a few golf clubs too, but they're willing to really allow these individuals to take care of these horses. And these are multi-million-dollar horses. And as you see, they begin to, you know, love their horses and bond with them. And it's just a tremendous impact. And I think the bottom line is that getting into meaningful employment is something you love is transformative in your lives, and it builds resiliency. So I think it's an extremely important part of that full continuum of care. Let me close with that, and we can take some questions. Again, Lori, thanks for all the work you're doing in this presentation.
We have many questions for Lori and Ernie today. So let's make sure that people know that if we didn't get to your question in the webinar, we'll get to them in the follow-up. And also, if Ernie and Lori can stick with us a little bit longer, we'll try to get to everyone. So first, how would we get some of the programs into a company? How would we partner with Future Plans or Fair Chance Works or Made 180? Lori, what would be the first step? How can we get to it?
Yeah, all you would need to do, I would be happy to set up a call with you, a Zoom, and I can fill you in on all the details and make those connections for you, and then ultimately let you decide if you feel that's right for you. Know, I speak from my experience and just what I've encountered, and it's worked very well for the work that I'm doing, but I would love to connect you with those folks. Not that it's the only resource out there, it's just the one that I have found that has worked best for me and the region that I'm in. But they would be happy to set up a call with you as well. So if you just email me, and I do not mind, or call me, I would be more than happy to make that connection, and let's get on a Zoom and see what they can offer and determine if that's right for your clients. But I can help you make all those connections.
Thank you, Lori. I put your email in the chat and also a couple of other resources in the chat for people. I didn't put your phone number in there, but I'll let you give that out when you're ready.
Yeah, it's on my slide. So.
Second question.
You can call me, text me, all the above.
Do you interview businesses to assess if they're recovery ready or recovery supportive?
Well, I do make contact with businesses, and you gain a lot of information about that. I don't necessarily do an assessment on them. I just sit down and have a face-to-face conversation with them. You know, I think it's so important to kind of be on that personal level and just say, you know, tell me what you feel like what do you need? And you tell me what you're currently doing, and let's see if we together can build a program that's mutually beneficial to you and that client. So I kind of take it from that approach. And I think, you know, having that personal approach with these businesses, it's before you know it, you've got a really solid relationship that you're just kind of one team helping these folks. I have never had a business ultimately tell me no. And I know that sounds crazy, but we have not. Some of them are a little hesitant, but in the end, we're able to work something out. So maybe just one person.
Yeah, there's a tremendous need out there, and we're finding more and more employers are willing to be what we would refer to as second chance employers. And a lot of these folks with SUD have some criminal justice involvement. So the employers have been more open to really look at an individual, as you mentioned at the very beginning, Lori, on an individual basis and a personal basis, and look at their background, and been very open. I think also with that continued, touching the employer, sometimes I think we can also help in them establishing a recovery-friendly workplace, and that's just part of being, connected with them. But reach out. Don't hesitate to call your employers in your area. Just about everyone that in this today's environment are looking for employees, and these are good employees. That's the thing you can assure them of.
They usually will want more. They'll call and say, okay, we hired 4, can you give us 10? That's usually how it goes. So just be prepared for that too, which is fantastic. That's a great problem to have, right?
Right. A follow-up question for you related to along those lines: can a granular sector approach be used in partnership with others, even the Department of Labor or the state or federal? The example given was App Harvest. Great insight into agribusiness.
Yes.
Would something like that when we think about a geography or an industry?
Yes. I mean, all approaches are, you have to attack it from all angles. I mean, nothing to me is out of reach, I mean, if you find a way to make it happen, you just start making those calls and making those connections and pull in anybody and everybody that has interest. And before you know it, you'll achieve what you're hoping to achieve with it. But it takes one person kind of being the cheerleader for everybody and pulling all those resources together. And I think that's something that Fletcher Group kind of does nationally. We try our best to kind of be that person that connects everybody. And when you get everybody there, you can really get a lot done. And so, I'd say, all approaches are welcome.
Thank you for that. Question about rural America. Ernie, I had typed in the chat that the Fletcher Group works in rural communities across the US. And this person is asking, can you talk a little bit about ways to integrate the different types of rural into the discussion?
That's a good question. I'll tell you what we find, and of course now it's true both urban and rural, but again, there's still a tremendous need in the rural areas. And the nice, I'll talk about in general, the real thing about rural areas is most of them have a tremendous need for economic development. And this is an extremely important part of economic development. You can't recruit employers, you can't keep employers if you don't have a good, well-trained, reliable workforce, and that's what we're bringing. Different communities, I'll say if you've seen one community, you've seen one community. There's a lot of similarities in rural areas because generally they don't have quite the resources you have in the urban areas. A lot of times they don't have the collaboration, and I think it's important to realize that in this kind of effort, Lori kind of pointed out indirectly, but you've got a lot of different entities you need to bring together. So I think the first thing is to look at the uniqueness of your rural community and see who are the stakeholders, who are the players. Look at who are the companies. There's also the opportunity of looking regionally. And I think that's important, especially when you get some rural areas that don't have a lot of employers maybe in one county you're working in, but regionally they may. And so I think if you can look at each county, and that means a surveillance, if you will, come in and see what the resources are, see who the employers are, see what the workforce development entities, look at the educational facilities that cover that area, and bringing all those groups, to the table. One of the things we found in Kentucky too, and I would encourage you to reach out, is the Chamber of Commerce has really taken up this issue in Kentucky and in other states. They're beginning to as well. And that's because they see the need for a workforce for the companies that belong to that entity, the chamber. So they're also an entity that you can reach out to and will help you understand the employers and employers' need in the region. So I'll leave it with that, but the rural areas are a particular area of opportunity because most of the rural areas that we work in really have a need for a workforce, and that usually is why sometimes even those rural counties are not growing or the population is decreasing because they're not able to attract and keep the industries. The other thing is entrepreneurship is extremely important in rural areas. Lori has found that out because you can generate businesses and value-added businesses, which increase the wealth of a rural community. I'll leave it at that. And
I just want to add one thing to that, Ernie, and one more thing to consider is when we were talking about those remote work hubs. You know, when you find a rural community that really doesn't have a lot of opportunity for employment, that is a great solution because you can work all over the world remotely. But then, you know, so you're training them for higher paying careers, but they're still living and working and paying taxes in that local community, which helps boost the economic growth of that community. So, you know, you're going to have individuals that's going to be very attractive to to work remotely. And that, I mean, like I said, they can work anywhere in the world. In a remote environment.
That's a great point. And another program you're doing, you kind of look, you know, referenced it, but for example, an individual, if they're trained in CAD, which we're doing that, you know, down in London, Kentucky, computer assisted design, they can do that from anywhere. And that's a high skilled job to being able to, you know, to do computer assisted design or drawings. So that's just one of the many remote jobs that you can develop. And I think that's, Lori, you really made a good point there that bringing the community together, you can also attract and build those kind of businesses that fulfill needs that may be across the world.
Thank you. We still have many more questions and a couple minutes left. So let me see if I can get to a couple more. Lori, do you have the ability to send certificates of completion or attendance when somebody's in a program?
We do. So, you know, some of them are nationally recognized credentials that we use. Some are not, but we do offer, you know, certificates of completion for them to include in resumes and some, you know, sometimes we're with Department of Corrections to satisfy, you know, if it's a good time credit served or something like that. So yes, we do offer, depending on what the class is, depends on what type of credential they earn. But we do make it recognizable that they have completed every training that they complete, because to me, that's something to be celebrated.
Great, thank you. And if somebody's looking for a certificate for participating in this webinar today with us, we don't have a certificate for that today.
But I can make you one. It may not hold much worth, but I'll be happy to make you one. I appreciate you being here.
We're happy to have everybody here. All right. I think the rest of them are ones that I'm going to encourage everybody who had a question to email Lori directly. Lori, we have someone who's interested in working with you on connecting with their Department of Labor and talking about financial resources to start up a program. Also in how to decide which recovery center to work with. And talk more about working with employers and what motivates groups to buy in and participate, in addition to the things that you talked about today. So fantastic. Everyone, this has been such a good discussion. At that, we will invite you to check out our website at fletchergroup.org. All of our bios and resources that are available to you through the Fletcher Group are available on our website. We have a newsletter that goes out once a month. We would encourage you to participate in that. And then in the months of October and November, we'll be launching and announcing some fantastic tools for individuals to use in their work. One is a recovery ecosystem index we're going to talk about in October. And then in November, we're going to talk about some recovery house handbooks, materials, and other things that are available for you. And with that, we'll thank you for participating, Lori and Governor Fletcher. We are happy that
My
you're here
pleasure.
today, and thank you.
My pleasure.
My pleasure. And thank you all very much for all the attendees and folks that helped put this together. We really appreciate this opportunity to share with you.
Yes. And please reach out.
This concludes our webinar session. Thank you so much for joining us today. Also, please tune in on the first Thursday of each month from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we will be hosting subject matter experts from across the nation to bring you valuable tools and resources for rural recovery house operators and SUD professionals. If you would like information on technical assistance, you can go to our website, again, www.fletchergroup.org, which I have also copied in the chat, and submit a technical assistance request. Lastly, please take a moment to respond to the survey questions once they become available on your screen. Your feedback is very important and greatly appreciated. Thank you and have a blessed day.